We would all like to do certain things differently if we had our time all over again, wouldn't we? But that doesn't mean we've got to live our lives with regret. What I mean by that is, because we can't go back in time to change decisions that we've made, there's really little point dwelling on them, is there? So instead, I prefer to learn from my mistakes and move forward, smarter than I was before. And in the world of property investing, there's so much to learn, and unfortunately, mistakes can be costly. So in today's show, I want to share with you 16 things I wish I knew when I started investing, lessons I learned along the way to maybe help you avoid some of the landmines and give you some shortcuts to your investment success. And then I'm also going to have a chat with Kate Forbes, National Director of Property Strategy at Metropole, to pick a brain and get some advice. The best tips she's had on property investment and some of the best tips she's learned along the way in her investment career on success. So welcome to this week's episode of the Michael Yardney podcast.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's most trusted property commentator who has once again been voted Australia's leading property investment advisor. That's the 5th time he's won a similar award in the last 7 years.
I'm often asked, what would I do differently if I could live my investment career all over again? Now, I certainly made my fair share of mistakes along the way, and boy, have I paid some huge learning fees because of them. However, instead of being defeated, I learned from each error and I moved forward a little bit wiser. And if you ask me, that's one of the keys to investment success. The ability to pick yourself up from the setbacks, learn from what you can from them, including your own limitations, and simply trying again. So to help you prevent some of the mistakes that I've made, I'd just like to share with you today 16 things that I wish I knew when I first started investing. And the first one is the value of education. At the start of my investing career, I believed that I knew enough to be successful. But that wasn't the case, of course. I didn't know what I didn't know. My first couple of investments were actually successful. But that's the worst thing that could happen to a beginning investor, because getting it right first time, you think you're smarter than you are. I bought my first investment property in the early 1970s. I paid $18,000. Well, actually, I didn't have enough money. I went halves with my parents. We went halves. I got $2,000 deposit somehow or other. I saved it doing some spare time work. And we got $12 a week rent and I was excited. But the Labor government came into power at the time and inflation went up and my property went up in huge value, giving me the interpretation, the guess that I was smart. A rising market made me think I was brilliant when I wasn't. Thankfully, when I recognised this and I started educating myself, I started to read books and listen to tapes. The younger people wouldn't even remember what they were in those days. I sought out teachers, I sought out mentors, I started seeking out consultants for advice. By the way, I still continue to educate myself. I'm still involved in personal development. To this day, I still have mentors. I still pay for education. So that's the rule number one. The lesson I wish I would have learned earlier would have saved me some heartache and some errors. The second lesson I'd like to share with you is far too many people get involved in property with no idea of what they want to achieve or by when. So I guess the lesson I would have liked to know earlier is the importance of goal setting. You see, people buy one or two investment properties, often in the suburb that they live in or that they understand, but they haven't actually set themselves clear long-term goals. So when I say it like that, it doesn't make any sense, does it, to do it that way? Obviously, you must begin with the end in mind. Setting goals helps you focus, because if you don't know where you're going, while any road may get you there, every road could also get you lost. I remember Jim Rohn saying, if you don't design your own life plan, chances are you're going to fall into somebody else's plan. And guess what they've got planned for you? Not much. The third lesson it took me a while to learn was to get a property team. Now, in Australia, there are 25 million property experts because everyone lives in a property of some sort, so most people think they know a bit about property. Now, while property investment may be simple, it's not easy, and you've heard me say before that that's not a play on words. Property investment does take skills, and sometimes those skills should come from other people who know more than you do. So my recommendation is get a good team around you, including mentors, including advisors. Let them be your brain trusts. Let them help you. But it's really hard in today's internet environment to find people who are independent, who actually are advisors rather than salespeople. People can make themselves look so good and look like experts when in fact they're not. It's not hard to get 10,000 LinkedIn followers or 5,000 Facebook fans and look like you're a guru. You've got to find somebody who's had a long-term track record. Remember, if you're the smartest person in the team, you're in trouble. Now, the next lesson I wish I had learned earlier was think rich, not poor. Look, you probably believe you deserve to be rich. You probably believe you deserve to be successful. The problem is your income will seldom exceed your personal development. And that's why it's important to develop the mindset of rich people and the rich habits of successful property investors. Now, here's another great quote from Jim Rohn, one of my mentors. Don't wish it was easier. Wish you were better. Don't wish for less problems. Wish for more skills. I learned about the importance of thinking rich and mindset probably too late in my career. Well, it actually wasn't too late because look where I am today. Boy, would I have liked to understand those principles much earlier in life. Another lesson I wish I would have learned earlier was it's important to have an abundant mindset. To become a successful property investor, to become successful at anything, you need an abundant mindset. Now, what do I mean by that? The analogy is to think of yourself as a cup. If your cup is small, you can only accumulate a small amount of money. An extra will spill over and you'll lose it. You simply can't have more money than the size of your cup. So instead, you need to develop an abundant mindset in which your cup is big and deserving of being filled with success. It's one of the things we discuss at Wealth Retreat and in my mentorship program, how to turn up your financial thermostat. It's important to actually grow your financial thermostat because most of our thermostats are set very low, and that's why we don't achieve what we're hoping to achieve. So develop an abundant mindset, one of the lessons I wish I knew earlier. Now, a lesson that's very important for many people to get earlier is the concept of delayed gratification. You know, that new pair of shoes, that latest smartphone, or perhaps the fancy car that you dream about. Do you really have enough money to buy them? Buy them with cash. Far too many people can't resist instant gratification of buying that shiny new toy. And they use their credit card thinking the money in the credit card limit's theirs. It's not. It's the bank's, and you're paying for a privilege of using that. It's called interest. So to become rich, you must learn to delay gratification because, as Warren Buffett wisely said, wealth is the transfer of money from the impatient to the patient. Another lesson I would have liked to know earlier in my investment career is the importance of overcoming your fears. Because the truth is that fear is a powerful human emotion. While it can help us, it can also prevent us from investing because we illogically see it as too risky to invest. Maybe the market timing's wrong. Maybe values are going to fall down. Maybe the government's going to change or taxes are going to change. However, with a sound investment strategy and a good property team around you, you can minimise your risks. One of the keys, therefore, is to overcome your fears and learn to be uncomfortable with being a little uncomfortable, especially in the beginning, because you're never going to know it all. That's what holds many people back, of course, that paralysis of analysis, the fact that they want to know it all. The trouble is, as you learn more, you're going to find there's even more you don't know. So be comfortable being uncomfortable. And another lesson important to learn early in your investment career is don't let failure hold you back. Look, we all make mistakes. Boy, have I made my share of mistakes. I made many in my investment career, probably not that many in my investments in the last 15, 20 years. I've made them in my personal life. I've made them in business. But the difference between ultra-successful people and the average Australian is that successful people don't let failure hold them back. Instead, they get up and they try again. Most people worry about things that are never going to happen. And all this does is prevent them from achieving their success. Instead, save your worries for when there's something really to worry about. I mean, think about it. Did all those things you worried about last year, 5 years ago, are they really important today? In fact, did they even eventuate? So what I'm doing is working through the lessons I would have liked to know at the beginning of my investment career to make me a more successful investor. I am very successful, and I've learned along the way how to get to the top of the property tree. And these are the lessons I'm trying to share with you to speed up your journey. So the next one is to understand the power of compounding and leverage. One of the biggest secrets to property investment is, as I said, compounding and leverage. This means the earlier you start your investing and the longer you hold your properties, the more time your money has to grow. Now, of course, you've got to own the right sort of properties, but with a long-term horizon, you don't have to be overly concerned about the ups and downs of the property cycle. You don't have to be that fussed about getting the timing right or buying it very cheaply. In fact, a large part of your asset base when you retire isn't going to be the money you've invested. It's not going to be the equity in the mortgage you pay down or the rent you've made or saved. It'll have occurred because of capital growth, the increasing value of your property. So correct asset selection is critical, and then holding it in the long term and allowing the magic of compounding to work, and you can speed it up by leveraging, in other words, borrowing against your assets so that therefore your assets grow even faster. Now, another lesson to learn, and I got sucked in when I was young, is there's no such thing as a get-rich-quick scheme. Sure, our property markets did really well for quite a few years now, and now they're a little bit quieter again, but over that boom period, particularly in Melbourne and Sydney, people did really, really well. But many investors forget that for 5-6 years beforehand, the Sydney market was pretty flat. Having invested for over 40 years now, one of the many lessons I've learned is that property isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. It's a get-rich-slow one. As Warren Buffett said, somebody's sitting in the shade of a tree today because somebody planted that seed a long time ago. The get-rich-quick scheme I got sucked into very early in my investment career was a gold mine. In fact, a friend of mine had paid, now it was $20,000, and this was in the 1970s, so I don't know, that'd be worth a couple of $100,000 today, and he paid that to invest in a gold mine, and I said, Brian, how silly are you? Why would you do that? And then this guy came around to my place and pulled out a nugget of gold from his pocket and put it on our dining room table and said, this could be part of yours as well. And they were visiting, opening old mines in Wedderburn, which was near Ballarat, and the company had a really impressive name, Asian Pacific Mining Corporation. And I put my $20,000 down, and the guy bought himself a Jeep and a helicopter and all sorts of stuff. We all got sucked in. I learned that not everything that glistens is gold, and there's really no such thing as getting rich quick. Another thing I learned along the way is ignore the white noise. Now, look, you're probably aware how the media loves a real estate story, particularly those that predict a bust at the moment. The truth is that there's never been a long-term significant fall in well-located investment-grade properties in our capital cities. It's unlikely to have a long-term downturn. So the downturns are temporary while the upturn is permanent. But there's lots of white noise in the meantime. So learn to ignore the white noise and keep your eyes on your long-term goals while not taking as much notice of the short-term market vagaries. Another lesson to learn is that both capital growth and cash flow are important. In my mind, residential real estate is a high-growth, relatively low-yield investment vehicle, and the key to wealth creation is to grow a substantial asset base of investment-grade properties. But I learned an important lesson during the recession we had to have, as it was called, in the early 1990s. While I realised that capital growth gets you out of the rat race, you need solid cash flow to keep you in the game. And while a number of my friends and business associates went bankrupt during that very downturn of the real estate market and the recession we had to have, I had the cash flow to get me through. And it's much the same today. So I have always kept cash flow buffers. That's why investors should protect themselves by having, whether it's lines of credits or offset accounts or cash. It's not a really good idea, the cash, to be honest, to see you through the inevitable rainy days, because they are going to come. Another lesson I learned was that location is non-negotiable. Remember, you've heard me say it before, that I don't know, about 80% of the Your property's performance will be due to its location, and about 20% will be due to the property itself, owning the right property in the location, but never compromise on location. So rather than look for the next hotspot, find a location with a long history of strong capital growth, and one that's going to continue to outperform the averages because of the demographics in the area. In general, these are the more affluent inner and middle ring suburbs of our capital cities, where the locals, the residents, the demographics have a high disposable income, and they're going to therefore be able to afford to and be able to be prepared to pay a premium to live in those areas. Next lesson I wish I'd learned earlier was don't throw your money away. To become rich, you need to spend less than you earn. You need to save the difference and then eventually invest it. Don't underestimate the importance of this seemingly simple message. The problem is too many people throw away their money buying things they don't really need with money that they don't often have to impress people that they don't even like. Like Robert Kiyosaki said, if you don't know how to care for your money, money's going to stay away from you. A lesson I learned along the way, and in retrospect I wish I'd learned it earlier, was that gratitude is important. Now, wealth means different things to different people, but I've learned over the years that true wealth has nothing to do with how many properties you've got or how much money you have. True wealth is what you're left with when they take all your money and your properties away. So yeah, I came from a very poor background, and so for the early years I chased money, I chased wealth, I chased assets, and I ruined my first marriage in the process of doing all that also. So I've really realised that, well, I speak a lot about money in these shows, and I speak a lot about property. True wealth, as I said, is what you're left with when they take it all away. It's somebody to love and somebody who loves you. It's your health. It's no use having all this money and being in a hospital bed. It's the ability to grow. It's the ability to be able to give back to the community. It's the ability to enjoy life. So gratitude is important. If you're not grateful, you'll never feel rich. And so I guess that brings me to the last lesson that I learned later in life than I'm proud to admit, and that's the importance of giving back to the community and charity. Because when I understood the importance of gratitude, then I also understood the importance of giving back to the community and charity. One of the most satisfying parts of my life is supporting our community and the various charities with my wife, Pam. Our successful property investments and business has made us extraordinarily lucky. So I believe it's my responsibility to help others who are less financially fortunate. If you're lucky enough to do well, it's your responsibility to send the elevator back down to help other people up. So the lesson from all of this is that property investment is a long-term journey. There's going to be market ups and downs and lessons to learn along the way. But with the right education and the right support, you can create and live a wealthy and grateful life. And we can't ask for more than that, can we? So as you see, there are a number of things that I've learned along the way that have helped me become a more successful investor. So here's my recommendation to you. Consider implementing some of these strategies today in your life, and I guarantee that success will be closer tomorrow than it was yesterday. In a moment, I'm going to have a chat with Kate Forbes, National Director of Property Strategy at Metropole, and ask her two questions. Give me 2 tips of great property advice you've received over the years, and also a couple of tips on general success advice. And Kate's an accomplished investor for over 20 years in multiple disciplines and over 2 continents, so I know she's going to come up with some great answers. But I should also tell you that as head of property strategy at Metropole and in head of the research department, she was instrumental in putting together our strategic property plan program that we help clients with. In fact, most people think of Metropole as buyer's agents, but in fact, while that's a part of what we do, we really help our clients grow, protect and pass on their wealth through property advice. But it all starts with having a plan, because it means it's going to help you see crystal clear what's ahead. So whether you're a beginner or a time-tested investor, why not consider allowing us to give you a second opinion on what you could be doing, because the services at Metropole will help you if you want to build a property portfolio but you don't know where to start, or maybe you've got some investment properties you're not too sure how they're performing at the moment. You may not understand how many properties you need or what's realistic in today's environment. Maybe it's all just too overwhelming. So it should all start, in my mind, with a strategic portfolio plan that's going to give you clarity about what's possible but also what's realistic. Think about it. If having a plan will actually tell you exactly how much cash flow you need and how many properties you'll need to achieve what you want, wouldn't it be worthwhile? What if it explains to you just the next steps, the timeline of what's involved? Wouldn't that be worthwhile? So why not go to metropole.com.au and leave us your details and allow our award-winning team to help you in these uncertain times? And let's have a chat with the leader of that team, Kate Forbes, Director of Metropole Property Strategists. In our ongoing series of top tips from real estate professionals, today my guest is Kate Forbes, National Director of Metropole Property Strategists. Welcome back, Kate.
Hi, Michael.
Now, Kate, you've had over 2 decades of investment experience in 2 continents and in multiple modalities. So my questions for you today are a couple of top tips you've learned about property investment over the years. And if you've got a moment, I'd also love you to share just a couple of general life success tips. So let's start with the property tips, Kate.
Of course. And I've been fortunate to have a great mentor in yourself. As you said, my background is across a number of different asset classes. And whilst there's some overriding principles that in investment that apply across all of the asset classes, when it comes to property, it's buy and hold that will give you the best long-term return results in there. But the big caveat in there is buy the best possible property that you can afford, buy it at or below intrinsic value, and then sit on it for as long as you can.
Now, it sounds simple, but that really is the case. And I know you've done a lot of research to help our property strategists explain to clients that timing isn't as important, tax returns aren't important, 0.5% extra interest rates or yield isn't going to make a difference. It's actually buying a property that outperforms the averages, because that's going to make a big difference. If you save $20,000 today by getting a bargain, doing a great negotiation, in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, when your property will be worth $2 million, that $20,000 as a percentage isn't going to make anywhere near as much difference as if you have a property that grows at 8% or 7% per annum rather than 5 or 6% per annum. So tip number 1, Kate, was buy the best property you can afford, hold it for the long term. What's your second property tip, Kate?
Well, it goes back to partly what you said there, and that's that you make your money when you buy. It really is much better to buy a good property at a bad price than to buy a bad property at a bargain price, because it's those years of performance from after you purchase it that are actually going to determine whether it's a successful investment for you or not. We see so many people obsessed with buying properties at a discount and trying to lock in immediate gains. And it really does lead them very often to distressed or inferior properties that will underperform perpetually from there on.
100% right. A cheap property today is most likely going to be a cheap secondary property in 5 years and 10 years' time. 2 good property tips. Let's talk more generally. A couple of good success tips, Kate.
Invest in yourself first.
I like that one.
It's always going to be your best investment by far, because what you can achieve elsewhere is always going to be bounded by what you have already achieved within yourself. And it's investing in yourself both emotionally, physically, spiritually, and financially that's going to allow you to become the best version of yourself.
Well, I know you live by that. While I was still in bed, you were up this morning, you've been to the gym, you've done your exercise, and you've done your research, because I saw the emails that you've sent. And so you've taken that to the next degree and you're looking after yourself well. That's great. What about another general good success tip?
Dream big. There's lots of wisdom around and various takes on the same message, but it pretty much all comes back to, if you can't dream it, you can't achieve it. So the more work that you do on yourself and growing personally and professionally, the more you're going to be able to achieve in every area, including in your financial investments.
Okay, I remember you telling me Larry Page said, tackle big dreams, there's no competition.
Absolutely.
Very few people at the top of the pyramid dreaming that way.
It's tough to think outside the box and dream big. And I think it just scares far too many people, and so they give up on it.
One last tip, Kate.
Jim Rohn, don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. He's well known for saying, don't wish for less problems, wish for more skills. And don't wish for less challenge, wish for more wisdom.
Beautiful. You know that Jim was a mentor of mine over the years as well, someone I've learned a lot from. So some great property and success advice from Kate Forbes, National Director of Property Strategy at Metropole. Thanks for your time, Kate.
My pleasure indeed, Michael.
Well, that almost brings us to the end of another show, but I'd like to read out 2 reviews I recently received. And if I read your review out, I'd be happy to gift you any of my books. You just email me at michael@metropole.com.au and tell me which one. One came from Stephen Chu. He's written, "Hey Michael, thank you for the great tips on the various risks in investing. It once again reminded me that risk is not knowing what you're doing. Investors need to continuously educate themselves so they're well informed and able to make good decisions." Well, thank you, Steve. I think that's great advice. And another one came from Happy Guys 96. Good stuff, he said. "Straight to the point and very easy to understand, even for a newbie. Mindset moments to keep my psyche in check. Loving it." Well, thank you, and I'm loving these reviews. So both of you are going to get a copy of one of my books when you email me in and tell me. I know Steve's already actually done it. He got in and cut it in, got in before the pack. Now, if you've enjoyed it, if you've got some benefit from today's show, why don't you pass the message on to somebody else? Just one person, tell them about the show, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, whichever way you like, or the old-fashioned just forwarding them details about it, because my aim is to help you and as many other people as possible get through the landmines, get through the hurdles, become financially independent, and let's help everybody else along the same journey as well. And I look forward to catching up with you again next week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?